You're exhausted, like deeply exhausted, the kind of tired where you can't remember what it felt like to not be tired. You're working your day job, you're running your side hustle, you're trying to build something. You're checking emails at midnight, you're waking up at 5 in the morning, you're sleeping 5 hours a night, and you've somehow convinced yourself this is normal. This is what it takes. This is the cost of success. And you look at the people around you and they're doing the same thing, working constantly, grinding, hustling, and everyone's talking about it like it's aspirational. Hustle culture, the grind. You have to want it badly enough to sacrifice sleep. Sleep is for the weak. The only way to get ahead is to outwork everyone. And you believe it, or you're trying to believe it. Because if you don't believe it, if you stop hustling, if you decide to sleep like a normal person and work normal hours, does that mean you're lazy? Does that mean you don't really want it? Does that mean you're going to fail? So you keep going. You keep sacrificing. You keep grinding. Because the narrative is so strong. The message is so clear. If you want to win, you have to sacrifice everything, including your health, including your relationships, including your actual life. And I spend way too much time thinking about this, about why hustle culture became a thing, about why we've normalized being exhausted, about the hidden costs of working yourself to death. Because here's the thing that nobody talks about. Hustle culture isn't actually helping people build wealth. It's actually making them poorer and sicker and sadder. And it's sold to poor and middle-class people as the path to wealth, while the actually wealthy are doing something completely different. And once you see this, once you understand what's really happening, you realize that hustle culture might be the biggest scam ever sold to America. Let me start with the math, because the math reveals everything. Let's say you're making $50,000 a year in your day job, so roughly $25 an hour. You're working 40 hours a week. That's your baseline. Now you start a side hustle. You're going to work 15 extra hours a week on your side business. That's a lot of time. That's basically a whole second job. You're doing this in the evenings and on weekends. And maybe you make $15 an hour on your side hustle. You're just starting out. So that's $225 a week. That's about $12,000 a year. So now you're making $62,000 a year, but you're working 55 hours a week instead of 40. You've added 15 hours to your week. That's about 350 extra hours a year. So you're making an extra $12,000 for 350 extra hours of work. That's about $34 an hour. But you're already working 40 hours a week at $25 an hour. So you're essentially paying yourself more, but barely. And you're giving up a massive amount of time. And here's the thing. Time is a finite resource. You have so many hours in a day. You have so many days in your life. And if you're spending all of them working, you're not spending them on anything else. Not on your health, not on your relationships, not on actual living. And the math only makes sense if the side hustle eventually becomes more profitable. But for most people, it doesn't. Most side hustles fail. Most people work themselves to exhaustion for years and end up with not much to show for it. All that time gone. And meanwhile, the actually rich, the people who are really winning, they're not grinding. They're not working 55 hours a week. They're leveraging. They're automating. They're hiring people. They're not trading their time for money. They're building systems that make money without their constant input. Okay, so let me talk about something that hustle culture completely ignores, and that's the health cost. When you're working 14-hour days, when you're sleeping 5 hours a night, when you're stressed constantly, your body starts to break down. Your immune system gets weaker. Your cortisol levels stay elevated. Your metabolism changes. Your skin gets worse. Your hair falls out. Your back hurts. Your sleep gets even worse because you're so stressed. And then you get sick. You get infections, you get the flu, you get something worse, and suddenly you can't work, and the whole system falls apart. Or more commonly, you develop chronic conditions, anxiety, depression, sleep disorders, high blood pressure, metabolic issues, autoimmune problems. And now you're not just tired, you're sick and tired. And all of that is expensive. Medical bills, medications, therapy, time off work, and the opportunity cost of not being able to work at full capacity because you're dealing with health issues. I knew someone who worked 100-hour weeks for 5 years. They were building a business, they were grinding, and then they had a heart attack at 38. Literally a heart attack. They survived, but it was a wake-up call, and they realized that all those years of grinding, all that sacrifice, it had cost them their health, and no amount of money was worth that. And the thing is, they probably would have built the same business working 60 hours a week instead of 100. They just would have taken longer, but they would have lived longer. They would have actually been alive while building it, instead of slowly destroying themselves.
Here's another thing that hustle culture doesn't talk about, and that's what it costs you in relationships. When you're working all the time, when you're grinding constantly, you don't have time for people. You miss your kids' events. You miss your partner's important moments. You miss your friends. You're working when you should be present. You're tired when you should be engaged. And relationships need time. They need presence. They need you. And when you're not there, when you're absent because you're always working, the relationships suffer, and sometimes they break. I know someone who was grinding for 5 years to build their business. They didn't see their family. They missed their kids growing up. And one day their spouse said, "This isn't working. I can't do this anymore." And they had to make a choice, the business or the family. And they chose the business, and they never got those years with their family back. That's the cost of hustle culture. It promises that the sacrifice is temporary, that once you make it, you'll have time. But by the time you make it, the time you sacrificed is gone. The relationships you neglected are damaged or broken. The life you missed living is in the past. And the wealth you built, the money you made, it doesn't bring those years back. It doesn't repair the relationships. It doesn't make you feel alive in the way that actually living would have. Here's something about hustle culture that's psychologically interesting, and that's that working yourself to exhaustion actually makes you less productive, not more. When you're tired, when your brain is depleted, you make worse decisions. You're less creative. You're less efficient. You take longer to do things. You make mistakes. So the extra hours you're working, you're probably working slower. You're probably accomplishing less per hour than you would if you were rested. There's actually research on this. People working 60 hours a week don't get 30% more done than people working 40 hours a week. They get maybe 15% more done, if that, because of diminishing returns, because exhaustion and stress makes you less capable, not more capable. So you're sacrificing your time, your health, your relationships, and you're not even getting the payoff of being more productive. You're actually less productive per hour than you would be if you were working 40 hours a week while well rested. That's insane when you think about it. You're sacrificing everything for a payoff that doesn't actually exist because you're too exhausted to be efficient anyway. Here's the thing that really gets to me about hustle culture, and that's that it's basically a poverty trap designed to keep poor and middle-class people poor while making them feel like they should be getting rich. The message is, if you're not rich, it's because you're not working hard enough. You need to hustle, you need to sacrifice, you need to work multiple jobs or build a side business. And people believe it, so they exhaust themselves working, and they don't get rich. And then they tell themselves they're just not hustling hard enough, so they work harder, and they still don't get rich. Meanwhile, the actually wealthy people aren't saying this. They're not preaching hustle culture. They know a secret. You don't get rich by trading time for money. You get rich by owning things, by leveraging, by creating systems, by having other people work for you. So hustle culture is basically a scam sold to people without money by influencers and marketers trying to build their own brands by selling the hustle narrative. It's a way to make poor people work harder without actually making them wealthy. And the wealthy people, they're just doing their thing. They're working smart, not hard. They're building businesses that don't require their constant input. They're investing. They're letting compound interest work. They're not grinding.
Okay, so let me ask you this, and I want you to actually think about it. You're working an extra 15 hours a week on a side hustle. That's 780 hours a year. That's 32 and a half full days of work. That's more than a month of your life every single year. And in return, you're making an extra $12,000 a year, minus taxes, so maybe $8,000. So you're trading 32 days of your life for $8,000. That's about $250 a day. Is your life actually worth $250 a day? Is that a fair trade? Maybe, if you were going to be doing something else with those 32 days that didn't really matter, but you're not. You're missing sleep. You're missing time with people you love. You're missing just existing without working. And here's the thing. There's a point where the trade-off stops making sense, where no amount of money is worth what you're sacrificing. And most people who are hustling have already passed that point. They're not benefiting anymore. They're just burning out. So the question is it actually worth it? Are you actually going to make it? Or are you just going to exhaust yourself, damage your health, sacrifice your relationships, and end up no further ahead than if you just worked a normal job and invested your money? Here's what I think most people don't realize. The wealthy don't hustle, not in the way that's portrayed in hustle culture. The wealthy work efficiently. They delegate, they automate, they create leverage. They build systems that work without their constant input. They invest, they own things. They let other people do the work while they collect the returns. And here's the key. They don't trade time for money. They own assets that generate money without their time. A wealthy person might work 40 hours a week on building a system, and then that system runs on its own and makes them money passively. A hustler works 80 hours a week trying to earn more by trading time for money. The hustler is working twice as hard and will never catch up. The wealthy person understands that your time is finite, that there's only so many hours in a day, so they design their lives around leverage, not effort, around systems, not hustle. And that's the real path to wealth, not working harder, working smarter, building things that work without your constant input. I want to give you something, permission. Permission to not hustle. Permission to work a 40-hour week. Permission to sleep 8 hours. Permission to have a life that's not just work. Because hustle culture has made you feel like that's not enough, like you should be doing more, like you're lazy if you're not grinding, like you won't be successful unless you sacrifice everything. But that's a lie. That's a narrative sold by people who profit from you believing it. The truth is, you can be successful without sacrificing your health. You can be successful without destroying your relationships. You can be successful without working yourself to death. And more than that, you might actually be more successful if you don't, because a rested, healthy, present version of you is more creative, more efficient, and more capable than an exhausted, sick, absent version of you. So give yourself permission. Work hard, yes, but work smart. Build systems instead of just working harder. Invest instead of grinding. Rest, sleep, be present with people you love. And if that means you get rich slower, if that means you don't get rich at all, that might actually be okay. Because what's the point of being rich if you're not alive to enjoy it?
So, what's the alternative to hustle culture? What's the path that actually works? It's building systems. It's investing. It's being efficient with your time. It's saying no to things that don't matter. It's working on things that compound over time instead of working on things that pay you once. It's understanding that the most valuable thing you have is your time, and you're not going to get it back, so you should be strategic about how you spend it. You should build things that work without your constant input. You should invest in assets instead of just chasing income. And it's having the courage to opt out of hustle culture, to work 40 hours a week and call it a success, to sleep 8 hours and not feel guilty, to have time for your family and your friends and yourself. That's the real path. That's what the wealthy are actually doing. And it's available to everyone. You just have to be brave enough to ignore the narrative and do it anyway. So here is what I want you to understand. Hustle culture is a trap. It's a narrative that keeps you working hard without actually making you wealthy. It costs you your health. It costs you your relationships. It costs you your life. And meanwhile, the actually wealthy people are doing something different. They're working smart. They're building systems. They're investing. They're not grinding. They're not sacrificing everything. So you have a choice. You can keep hustling, you can keep sacrificing, you can keep telling yourself that it's worth it, that one day it will pay off. Or you can opt out. You can work efficiently, you can build systems, you can invest, you can actually live your life while you're building wealth. The first path is exhausting and often doesn't work. The second path is actually harder in some ways because it requires thinking and strategy instead of just effort. But it's the path that actually works. It's the path that leads to real wealth and real happiness. So my challenge to you, stop hustling, start building systems, start investing, start resting, and see what happens when you work smart instead of just hard. You might be surprised. You might actually get further ahead and feel better doing it. Thank you for thinking through this with me. If this resonated, please share it with someone who's caught in the hustle culture trap. And let me know in the comments, are you hustling? What would change if you stopped? Thanks for watching.